Okay, this is part 3 of the third and final video. This is segment 2 to it. I just got back on eBay and realized that YouTube had taken 2 of them off because they went over the 15-minute time limit. So the second part of part 2, what it was basically this wheel being spun without it being balanced, and it went over 15 minutes. So instead of spinning at approximately 5 miles an hour, I'm going to do this one at 3 miles an hour. This wheel has been balanced and it does have the ceramic bearings in it. And you can watch when I get ready to spin it how slow I actually get it going. So it's approximately 3 miles an hour when I spin it. And I've got my iPhone started, so we'll make sure we don't go over the 15-minute mark here. And again, you can take a high quality bearing like come stock in the Zipp wheels, and they're one of the best bearings that are manufactured out there. You can look at those under, let's say, 200 times magnification, and those balls are not round. They actually look like the surface of the moon. They've got flat spots in them, craters, all kind of stuff. Ceramic bearings you can magnify up to 500 times, and they're just as smooth as glass. They're about as perfect round as you can make any object. You don't want to run any type of lubrication in these. These are dry lube for life. There's no seals on them. If you happen to ride where it's dusty or raining and you get mud splashed on them or any kind of contaminants in it, you just wash them. Take the hubs off the outside, wash them out in the kitchen sink with soap and water, and air dry them or blow them dry, and that's all you need to do. Don't put any type of lube in them, not even a lightweight machine oil like a 0 weight or a 5 weight. You can take a standard bearing, put it on a Dremel tool and spin it, let's say at 5,000 RPM, which is roughly about 15 miles an hour on a bicycle, and after about 20 seconds it'll get so hot you can't even hang on to it. You can spin a full ceramic bearing at 30,000 RPM forever and it won't ever get so hot you can't even hang on to it. So a lot of people have asked me about the drive on this with the gearing being so high. The strong light with a 50-35 gear set on it and the Campy on the back, the titanium cassette with a 12 tooth, you can actually, because of the ceramics in the wheels, the bottom bracket, the rear cassette, the rear wheel, and the rear derailleur, anybody can pull this gear set. You know, a lot of you guys that ride a lot, you can drop that rear tooth down to an 11 and still be fine. The top on that rear is, I think it's a 25. I can't remember from the auction though, but we did a lot of tests on a lot of different wheels, about 20 different manufacturers, and we ran ceramic bearings in all of them. There's a hill where I live that's about a 15-degree grade, and it's about 75 feet up it, and it's got miles of run out down there. And these Zipp 404s constantly ran out about 150 yards farther than any other wheel assembly we tested with the exact same bearings in them. I don't know if it's the spoke design, the dimpled effect, just whatever it is, but these wheels, like I said, consistently rolled out 150 yards farther. These things spin so easy, you can get into a draft behind your friends and you don't have to pedal. They will actually pull you along. You get into a tuck going down a hill and you'll leave everybody behind. So we're at about the 4-minute mark now. If this doesn't stop spinning before it gets to the end, I'll either stop it or slow it down real slow so you can see what it's going to do when it stops. Any of you guys out there that's got any the System 6 frames, a lot of the manufacturers, Japanese and all, they like to come out with a new design every year, and believe me, that doesn't necessarily mean new and improved. The super frames that they came out with, we tested 2 or 3 of those, and believe me, this frame is one of the best frames that Cannondale, or for that matter, any of the other bike manufacturers has ever produced, except maybe a few rare ones out there. But the other frame that I've got, I've kept it and I've had it repainted a couple different times, but between the lightweight of it, this bike with pedals and all still weighs under 14 pounds. The weights I put on the front only consist of about 10 grams, so it didn't add a lot of weight to it, but having that wheel balance makes a huge difference in it. The back wheel, even with the chain and the cassette and everything on it, you can get that back wheel up to speed with the pedals, and it'll turn for about 5 minutes on its own. So these wheels that I've sent, I've done quite a few wheel sets for people and sent them out, and I've talked to even the complete bikes with the bicycle shops that I've sent them to have them sized for them, and just try to get a feel, make sure they're familiar with ceramics, and they're all like, yeah, we deal with them all the time. And then they get them in, they break a bearing, they shatter a bearing, and then, you know, I talk to them and they're like, well, we've really never seen bearings like that, even though prior to that they knew exactly what I was talking about. So these bearings are extremely brittle. If you drop them on the concrete or a hard surface, they'll shatter almost like if you drop mercury out of your hand. They're super hard, but they're super brittle. They've got to be pressed in perfectly into the hub. You can't pound them in, tap them in. They've got to be pressed in precisely or they will fracture. If anybody has any problems with the bearings, as long as they're not broken or cracked, I can get them replaced for you if you'll send them back to me whole. But I've never had to do that before. These things just, they do not wear out. The only problems I've ever had is people tightening the hubs down too tight and cracking the bearings, or someone not putting the cassette all the way in the back wheel and tightening the back wheel assembly down and cracking it like that. Otherwise, you can't wear these bearings out. Okay, we're at about 7 minutes now. And again, that's a spin that was roughly about 3 miles an hour, so we've probably got another probably 7 minutes on top of that, but let's see how long that'll spin for. I did a Conalgo President for a friend of mine about 9 months ago, and they don't use complete bearings. They're hyper-on wheel assembly. It just uses balls, and we'd actually replace the balls in there with ceramic balls. The SIN and 4, the high-grade black balls, and they had, we actually got over 25 minutes out of that wheel assembly. That was the fastest wheel assembly that we have ever tested, bar none. But again, you're looking at $5,000 for just a set of wheels. But you know, and up until just, I don't know, maybe a year or two ago, you know, even the bearings on these prices were out of reach for most of the consumers. They have come down a good bit, but you've still got to be really careful. The bearings that you see on eBay, the Chinese bearings, they're not really much better than what the bearings are that come in your bike, and you'll replace them, you know, in a couple months. They're not pure ceramics. They'll break, they crack. They're not any, the balls on them aren't rounder than any, really, the steel balls that come in the factory wheels. So you're just wasting your money if you go that route. And there's no sense in putting them in the steering stem or the pedals. You're not going to gain anything by that. The wheel assemblies, the derailleur pulleys, and the bottom back for your cranks, you'll see a benefit there. But what's the purpose of putting ceramics in a steering stem? And you see a lot of people that are doing that, and it just makes no sense. I guess unless they're turning the wheel, you know, 150 times a second. But keep track of that time. We're at 8:45 now. By that front wheel being balanced and even the back wheel being balanced, you transmit a lot more power to the ground with that, because the wheel's not fighting against itself because it's out of line. It's the same thing with a car. When you've got a tire that's out of line, how you can feel it hopping, you can feel the vibration in the steering wheel. It does make a big difference. And it takes a long time to balance these wheels, you know, really any wheel assembly, because there's not any equipment out there that does it mechanically like at a tire shop. It's a hit and a miss game. Sometimes you can get it pretty quick, and I've been doing it for a couple years, and it normally takes me about an hour per wheel to get it right on there. And believe it or not, actually when you're on this bike and riding it, weight on those wheels actually makes them turn with a lot more less resistance than what they are turning free like they are now. So they even turn better with a rider on them. I'm going to try to zoom into the rim assembly itself when it goes around, so maybe you can see the weights on there. Maybe I should have done that before I started it, but you actually see some little bumps come up on here. There they went right there. There's actually 3 small weights. 2 of them are 4-gram weights and one of them's a 2-gram weight. There they went again. Those are the weight assemblies, and they're on there with 2-sided adhesive, so they can be removed if you want, but they're not going to fall off. And there they went again. We're at 11.5 minutes now. I don't know if I said this earlier, but I bought these wheels about 2.5 years ago at Geneva Bicycle Shop in New York. And when I got them out today, I started looking at them, and the white in the Zipp part is actually starting to yellow. They do that after a couple years or so. You can buy these decals new from Zipp, or you can get them off of eBay. I wouldn't mess with them unless it's a huge deal for you. You might end up messing with the balance on it, or not even get the decals back on there right. So unless it's a big deal, I just leave them on there like they are. They're not going to hurt anything. Just to make sure that we stay under the 15-minute mark on this, I'm going to slow this rim down just a little bit. So we're at 12.5 minutes right now. And another thing, any of you guys that's got any wheel assemblies you'd like to get the bearings in, if you want to send me an email through eBay, I can get a cost to you and an idea, time frame, what it'll run for me to do it. I just need to know what wheel assemblies you have, and I can give you an estimate on doing a set of rims for you. Okay, we're at 13.5 minutes now, so if this doesn't stop by the time we're at about 14 minutes and 45, I'm going to go ahead and stop it and shut it off just to make sure it'll upload this time. You know, and this has been 14 minutes now from about a 3-mile-an-hour spin. Okay, we're at the 14-minute point now. Oh, we might actually have stopped it. And it's probably going to coast back the other direction. It'll spin back the other way for about another 2 minutes once it hits this point. But here I'm going to shut it off right now and see if I can get this uploaded. Hope you all enjoy it.